1968 was a tumultuous year, including events such as the Prague Spring, the Tet Offensive in Vietnam, and the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert F. Kennedy. This PowerPoint illustrated lecture discusses those events and what Shrewsbury is like in 1968, including population, budget, town government, housing prices, and what's going on and what is still here today. Local authors Michael Perner and Henry Graham Petro will join John for questions and answer period. Henry and Mike in the back. Thank you. About the presenter. John Campbell is a 37-year resident of Shrewsbury, formerly served many years on the Shrewsbury Finance Committee. He currently serves as the chair of the Historic District Commission. He has previously presented programs at Shrewsbury Historical Society on the Worcester Foundation for Experimental Biology, and Shrewsbury native Lieutenant General William Paul Stewart. There was a third, though, and I can't remember his name. The rich guy turned, the young guy turned rich. But anyways.
Jesse
Yes.
Livermore.
Livermore, yes. Okay, John?
Thank you, Eric. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight, and especially to be joined by Mike Perner and Henry Graham Petro, who I'm going to ask to come up during the question and answer period. And they're both authors. Mike has written 4 books. He's our appointed town historian, and Shrewsbury Through Time, Shrewsbury Images of America, one of my favorites, Remembering Lake Quinsigamon, from Steamboats to White City. And Henry Graham Petro, somewhat of a newer author, wrote a book, Dad's at Work and Mom Can't Drive. Henry also has the cable program Sentimental Journey. So I've asked both of these guys because I think some of us may want a chance to purchase these books, and I think they're going to make great stocking stuffers or Christmas presents. So after the question and answer period, Mike and Henry will be available with their books. So thank you. So as Eric said, 1968 was a tumultuous year, and it's the year I graduated from high school. And by the way, Henry and Mike, Shrewsbury High School, class of 68. So I graduated in 68 as well, so that's why it had an interest. In many ways, 1968, until 1968, you know, the 60s, we were still kind of an Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver country. I think 68 kind of changed things. And so I wanted to talk about that, but I want to talk about Shrewsbury too, which I think you're going to find of interest. I actually wanted to find some pictures that were relevant to Shrewsbury in 68, and I picked 4 of them out. I only had room for 2. The other 2 of interest were, thank you, Paul. The other 2 were a picture of the Worcester Foundation and also a picture of Lake Quinsigamon. So I think, along with Spags and Ward Hill, that kind of makes you think of Shrewsbury in 1968. The Prague Spring. This is a big event back then, and Czechoslovakia under Alexander Dubček wanted more freedom, and the young people were kind of demonstrating in the streets, and the Soviets didn't want that because this was a Warsaw Pact country, and so they sent in 400,000 troops. That was approaching as many troops as we had in Vietnam in those days. And the troops, many of them didn't know where they were or why they were there. They were peasants, basically, from Russia, from East Germany, from the other Warsaw Pact countries. And in interviews with them, they didn't know why they were there. But anyways, they replaced Alexander Dubček with a Soviet-appointed hardliner from, he was Czech, but he was under Soviet control. And I think this event kind of marked the beginning of the end of the Cold War, and 21 years later, the Berlin Wall fell, and Soviet Union, became no more. So this was kind of an interesting time. The other big event, and it started in late January '68, was the Tet Offensive. And I know we have at least one Vietnam veteran in the room. Anybody else here in Vietnam? We have another Vietnam vet. Were you at Tet also?
I just left right before.
You just left, okay. So This was a surprise attack started in late January. There was a truce going on, but the North Vietnamese regulars and the Viet Cong had a coordinated surprise attack on the major cities in South Vietnam. It was a victory for the Allies, but it was a case of we won the battle but lost the war. Because what happened, we all watched Walter Cronkite. It was the first war that was on TV. And at the beginning of '68, the majority of Americans were kind of in favor of what we were doing in Vietnam. It was a domino effect. We had to stop communism there. By the end of '68, the American public was against it. They said, it's a mistake. Vietnam shouldn't be, we shouldn't be there. So Lyndon Johnson, that was a big part of his decision not to run. Remember, he became president when Kennedy was assassinated in '63, ran on his own and won in '64. And then in '68, everybody thought he was going to run for his last term, and he decided at the, 6 months before not to run. He said, I will not accept a second term. So that was a big event. And then, of course, Martin Luther King in April was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. Big event, it was all over the news, of course, and it was a very tough time for a couple weeks after that. And then, this is interesting. Robert F. Kennedy in June was assassinated. He had won that day. He won the California presidential primary and the Oregon primary. In all likelihood, if he wasn't assassinated, he would have been nominated as a Democratic candidate in 1968. Who knows how history and future might have changed if he hadn't been assassinated. He likely, would have been nominated. Would he have won or not is the question. But that was a thing that I'm sure is marked in all of our minds. Any of us who were young adults or older, in '68 certainly remember that. And there was a lot more that went on. The Democratic Convention, Mayor Daley, Chicago police were in a pitched battle with the demonstrators at the Chicago 1968 Democratic Convention. Abby Hoffman from Worcester was leading the way, and the others, and it was a real pitched battle. And of course, it was on, they had cameras then, not like today. Today they would have had 1,000 times more film, but there were certainly pictures of it. College campuses were alive with demonstrations. They took over the president's office at a lot of colleges, and they had strikes, and right here in Worcester, Clark University marched to City Hall, and Holy Cross they marched, and I think that is Columbia University there. And then, of course, the symbol of '68, the Olympic protest in Mexico City at the medal awarding ceremonies. But what happened in Shrewsbury, little old sleepy Shrewsbury? We went from 19,000 people, approximately, 36,805 right now, and still growing. I wouldn't be surprised if in the 2020 census we break 40,000 or close to it. It's interesting. People talk about the growth, and we haven't quite doubled. But 100 years ago, in 1918, we were about 4,500. So we basically went 4 times from 1918 to 1968, where we've just about doubled now. So I'm sure back 50 years ago, people were saying, boy, this town's growing like crazy. But that's the population. And I'm sure you recognize all the names on here, if you've been in town a while. Mr. Carney, nobody called him Dick or Richard as far as I know, other than his wife. George, what did you call him? Mr. Carney, okay. And Ernie Tozy, he's kind of a character. I loved Ernie and his wife Ellen, who were longtime members and supporters of this organization. He was a longtime town clerk, and I'm sure these 5 selectmen, many of you knew, years ago. Everyone's gone on this list right now. So those are the people that ran Shrewsbury. Yeah, Mike Trotter, who lived in North Street, was one of the last on this list to pass away.
I went to school with Herbie Dufresne's daughter,
Okay.
Howie White's daughter.
Yeah, and Howard White's son, Brad White, is
Yep.
a friend of mine too. So that's who ran the town. And registered voters, we've gone up to 23,000. Sandy Wright gave me that number a few weeks ago. The largest turnout in Shrewsbury's election history was the election of 1968. Sandy told me right now they get around 80% for a presidential election. Some of the primaries, they get 10 to 12%. But this is kind of interesting. By a show of hands, who knows who ran for president in 1968 on both sides? President and vice president. Don't say it yet. Okay, don't say it yet. Okay, George, who ran?
Well, Richard Nixon ran for president.
Right.
Spiro Agnew.
Agnew. And who did he run against?
McGovern, I want to say.
No. Humphrey.
Yeah, Hubert.
And the guy from Maine, Muskie. So anyways, that's the election, and here's who ran. And what's kind of interesting is the results. Humphrey and Muskie won Shrewsbury, got almost 58% of the vote against Nixon and Agnew. On a national basis, it was about 44 to 42%. There was a third-party candidate. Does anybody know who else ran? He wasn't on the ballot in Massachusetts. George Wallace, right, from Alabama. So he took some of the Southern vote. Historians say it probably wouldn't have made a difference, but he took votes from both sides. So, anyways, kind of interesting. I think that Humphrey and Muskie did so well in Shrewsbury back then. Home prices in Shrewsbury, and I went to the Worcester Public Library. They have the Telegram and Gazette on microfilm, and I actually got the June '68 edition, and I looked up housing prices in the classified ads. And it's amazing what housing prices went for. I got struck by this. A 5-bedroom colonial on 5 acres. Imagine that, 5 acres. We have two, Nancy, Malcolm, we have 2 seats right up front here. And, if you wanted to start a home, $13,900 on Lake Street for a small 5-bedroom ranch. And I thought it was interesting. You could buy all 5 of these for $96,000 and change. Let me ask you a question by show of hands. How many bought a house here for less than $75,000? Okay, almost every hand in the room goes up. How many bought a house for less than $50,000? A lot of houses hands are going up. Okay. How about less than $30,000? Hands are still going up. We got at least 10 hands. How many less than $25,000?
Years ago.
Wow. Oh, well, yeah, exactly. This is 50 years ago. How many less than $20,000? Still going up. Boy, we're going to have to pay you pretty soon. How many? Let's go for $15,000. Anybody buy a house for $15,000? We got houses gone up. Okay. What about anybody buy a house for less than $10,000? No hands go up. So it is the break point. So for a little more than $10,000, you could buy a house. So this is, kind of around town back then, and housing prices have changed. Town budget, $5 million. Today, $122 million. We have young David Snowden here, who is going to be working on a budget quite a bit come the first of the year. He's employed by the town of Shrewsbury, and the budget is his responsibility. About 50% on the schools, it's creeped up a little bit. Now we're about 52% on the schools. And, you know, that part of this is inflation, part of it is growth in the size of the town and the population. 1968, about $740 a year for the average residential tax bill. Today it's over $5,500. Interesting question. The tax rate was $37 a thousand back in '68. Now it's only $12.66. Anybody know why?
100% valuation.
Exactly. We didn't fully value, and Prop 2.5 requires to fully value. Back then, you were being taxed on about 30% of the value of your home. Today, it's supposed to be 100. It's close to it. If you look at your tax bill, you probably figure, well, I can get more than that for my house, and you probably can. But now we're at full valuation. So that's the tax rate. And this is interesting. School building. We built Spring Street School and opened it in 1968. $773,000. And we got a lot of state reimbursement for it. The Beale School replacement, which is pending, being acted on this week and October 22nd at town meeting, and at the election, the first, November 6th, we vote on it for a override. 94 million. I've been corrected, it's 93 million now. They've reduced some of the costs.
Well, in the high school, when the high school was built,
Yeah.
high school was built for 60 million.
Yeah, but that was almost 20 years ago.
Right, right.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Ted, it's not an override.
It's a debt exclusion, excuse me, there's a big difference. We're gonna pay it off in 20 years, just like we're paying off the high school and all the other buildings. I meant to say that. It's a debt exclusion, you're right. So I thought that was interesting. Now, the new Beale School is more than twice the square footage. It's got all kind of extra things for special ed and things that are mandated by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's really not fair to, compare. But anyways, that's what's happening on schools in Shrewsbury. Shrewsbury Police Department. Ken Burns. Anybody remember Ken Burns? There's a bunch of hands go up. He had 20 officers back in 1968. Today, Jim Hester has 47 sworn officers. They also have 4 or 5 people in clerks, and they have dispatchers and things. But the sworn officers, 20 versus 47. And the next big project in Shrewsbury after the Beale School, we think, will be the police station, and we're sure a building committee will be appointed sometime in the next couple of years to start the preliminary work on a new police station. I've actually had a tour of it.
When was this one built?
72.
72, about 72. So by the time it's replaced, it'll be well over 50 years. Dot.
Had 3 additions on it.
Yeah, it's had some additions, but it's probably it's the only buildings in Shrewsbury that are run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are the fire department and the police department. I would make the case the police department gets a lot more rough service, rough duty than the other, than the fire department. Not that they don't have some rough duty sometimes. But, so anyways, there's where we are there. And then the Shrewsbury Fire Department. And George Duhamel did not work on the building on the right. Michael Perna's, he did, okay. Michael Perna's father might have.
No, Mike, yeah, I worked in that building.
Oh, he did, okay, he did,
I came on in 68 and Frenchie hired me.
Okay. Alexander LaRue was the chief, they called him Frenchie. And it was 27 men on the staff and 20 men on call. Today, under Jim Vona, we're only 38. We've only added 11 people, even though Shrewsbury's doubled in size. And a 15-man on call. So, Michael.
If you look closely at the picture on the right,
Yeah.
in the first bay there's somebody sitting on a chair.
Yeah.
My father used to get kind of upset with me. I'd say, there's a fireman sitting on the chair doing what firemen do most of the time.
Okay.
That's before they put the addition on the building.
Okay.
They had a shed on that made it bays longer.
Okay. To accommodate the equipment probably, yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is a picture of some of the firemen today. I can see Bruce Card Jr. in there, and I'm sure we could recognize some of the others. That tall fellow on the end is a nice guy. Yeah, he does a lot of the maintenance. But anyways, this is the story here. We've increased the fire department, but not anywhere near what the standards say it should be. But again, in Shrewsbury, if you call 911, you're going to get a first responder, probably the police department, the fire department, and an ambulance. You know, and it's really a good thing if you have a problem and call 911 in Shrewsbury, you're going to get some help.
If you dial 911 from a mobile phone,
Yeah.
you get the Framingham State Police, and you have to specify Shrewsbury.
Okay, did you hear that? If you call 911 from a cell phone, a mobile phone, you end up with the Framingham State Police, and you have to tell them you're on Oak Street in Shrewsbury, because there's a lot of Oak Streets on Main Streets.
They'll transfer you to the Shrewsbury 911.
They'll transfer you, okay. Kind of interesting, 3 places to see movies in 1968 in Shrewsbury. White City Theater, Edgemere, and Shrewsbury Drive-In. And back in June, what was playing? The Graduate, Sand Pebbles with Steve McQueen and Candace Bergen. Candace Bergen is on tomorrow night on Murphy Brown. They're redoing it 25 years later. And then Shrewsbury Drive-In had The Happiest Millionaire with Fred McMurray, and you know other movies. I'm sure everyone in here has seen most of, not all of these movies. But I thought it was interesting. There's no place in Shrewsbury today to pay to go to a movie, but back then we had 3 places. Of course, everyone has Netflix and Hulu and all those things. So, and we watched television. I kind of remarked it wasn't too many years before this that we were watching television in black and white. But these are some of the top programs that Shrewsbury people were watching. I'm sure that you remember all these. Yeah, yeah. So those are some of the TV programs. What's gone and what's still here? Well, obviously Spags and the Worcester Foundation are gone, and I hope Michael and Henry are going to be able to talk a little bit about Spags and some stories there. And other things that are gone, Orlando's, Julio's, and Big D. I've heard a lot of people say, I miss Julio's. And the reason is, these stores are about 1/4 to 1/3 the size of Price Chopper or Wegmans. You could get in, do your shopping, get out. It wasn't like, you go to Wegmans, and I know it's not in Shrewsbury, but it's a great store, but man, you could take two hours going up and down everything, you know, it's just huge. And Julio's especially, and it was a Big D right in the center of town, right across from the library. And Orlando's down on Route 9. Had a Center Dairy Bar. I remember when I first moved to town, I'd go to the Center Dairy Bar a few times, not often, and then go to the dump. We had a dump in Shrewsbury. You could bring anything but live ammunition or dead animals. It was really something. We had a dump. You could just bring stuff there. Hill Drug, Howard Johnson's, the Driftwood, Bronzo's, and Mickey Green's. And Donnie remembers Mickey Green certainly. These were nightclubs. Howard Johnson's was a restaurant, but you know, we had that. Shrewsbury Nurseries was here. It's been closed now for probably 8 or 10 years. And we had the theaters. And what's still here? A few things. Ward Hill, Hebert's Candy Mansion, though it has some ownership changes, but it really is, for the most part, unchanged. And then some other things. The IHOP, still here. Commerce Bank, been here 50 plus years. Thomas Auto Parts. Peroni's Barbershop. Who's ever got a haircut there? We got about 8 or 10 hands go up. And they had Dunkin' Donuts in Shrewsbury back then. So I said, what's Shrewsbury going to be like 50 years in the future? I think the population, talking to some people, seeing a projection the town had, and they didn't go out anywhere near that far, but 50 to 55,000. Trees don't grow to the sky. You can't just, we don't have enough lots to keep building. But I think we'll be, you know, in that area. Town budget, if we increase 3% a year, compounded, will be at half $500 million, 537 million. That's based on a 3% increase. If inflation comes back, who knows? Average residential tax bill, same thing, compounded only 3%, because our taxes can only go up 2.5%, because of Prop 2.5, plus the new growth, plus state aid, plus Schedule A receipts like excise tax and fees and things. So it's reasonable at 3% that we'll be at $24,000. Could I have the lights, please? So at this point, I'm going to ask Henry and Mike to come up, and we're going to just answer any questions you have. And what I thought we might do on the first question is talk about Spags. That's Shrewsbury. When was its peak? What about the tomato plants? Someone told me the little 25 packet tomato plants, they got a whole trailer load of them. I don't know how many tomato plants that must have been.
A lot of guys went through twice. The old timers, they go through twice just to get 2 packs.
Okay. So anyways,
That was the big Mike. That was
I'm gonna
the-
turn
that. was
that-
the Bigies, though.
who wants to start on Spags? Would love to hear
Well,
it.
I live right across the street.
Okay.
If you guys remember the garden shop, that was my house. My grandfather's house. When he first came to this country, I think he, well, across the street was my great-grandparents, the Viscardis. He built that house in 1913 for $1,000 in assorted poultry. That's how we got the land. But every time there was a storm coming, my mother would run right into Spags. She didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to hear the storm, so she'd go into Spags. And the old timers, like my grandfather and probably your grandfather, they called him Tony. They didn't call him Spag. It was Tony. And but he was smart though. I worked there one Christmas. You know what he did? He had the housewares in the front of the store, but he had housewares in the back of the store. So if you couldn't get something in front of the store, you had to walk through the whole place, and you know you're going to get something. You know you're going to see something you're going to buy. A few things. Remember you had to get boxes?
Yep.
And those cashiers, remember how fast they were? All cash. And they'd throw the cash up the chute. Boom! And you'd hear it go up to the office.
Yeah, sometimes it didn't go to the office. We had to stay that night and take the whole thing down all the
Well,
time.
my uncle was 16 years old. I think he was 13. My uncle Ralph Zona, some people might remember him, worked at Spags as a 13, 14-year-old. Spag was just new back then. Not new, but you know, young as far as the store. And he used to give my uncle the receipts to take home for the week, for the night. He trusted him that much. And really, he worked at Fish and Tackle Counter for 35 years. And you could buy anything at Fish and Tackle Counter. Stopwatches, fishing poles. They sold ammunition.
Lionel trains.
Yeah, Lionel trains. They sold ammunition. Mr. DeRico worked there. Mr. Coulter worked there for a while. Bob Salucci worked there. And I remember one time I bought a yo-yo. I won't talk too much more. I bought a yo-yo one time. It was 79 cents. I hadn't had this yo-yo. Well, you know what? I only had 77 cents. Babe Hammerstrom was the cashier. And I put all my money out and counted my pennies and everything. And he said, "You're short 2 cents. But you know what? I know your father. Go ahead."
Any other questions from the audience about 1968 or Shrewsbury history? Mike, go ahead,
We
please.
have a couple of Spags employees here. My wife worked there for 10 years.
Okay.
Gail
Don, where you
Johnson.
worked there?
Yeah,
I worked with
My
you.
father worked there
Johnson.
longer than I did.
Yep,
I worked with you one Christmas.
He liked to hire Shrewsbury people, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. When she went to apply for a job, they had a stack of cards like this. And whoever was hiring the people said, "How come your name is on top? Because all these cards are old." And she said, "I don't know." Because my father grew up with Spag,
Yeah.
so she went to the top of the list.
He did the same thing with me. I went there one Christmas. We were just married. I needed a part-time job. So I went to his house. My mother said, "He won't hire you. He already bought us a house." So I said, "I need something, Mom." So I went to his door and he took me in his office. It was October. He says, "We're not really hiring for Christmas yet, but I'll call you if we do. So I started to get up to leave. Wait a minute. Go see Johnny Rice, he'll give you some hours. So I worked, and that's where I met Dawn. We worked together for that Christmas.
Okay. Any other questions for Mike and for Henry? 1968, Shrewsbury history in general,
Mike, do you see
Lakeland
who's here?
Sigerman.
Our old substitute teacher, Mrs. Ward.
Mrs. Warren.
I saw her in the store the other day, right? She looked at me, she goes, Henry Grant Petro, 1968, your mother graduated in 1940. And you were good to us though, we were jerks.
I was kidding with lots of things.
I know.
Who here went to Mickey Green's for an adult beverage once in a while? Okay, a few hands go up.
George, you never went.
Yeah.
I have a story, but I can't believe it.
Okay. How about Bronzo's? Anybody go to Bronzo's? Okay, a bunch of hands go up. And the Driftwood, that's the only one of the three. Well, I went to the, yeah. Got married to Driftwood.
If we had a reunion there.
Yes, we
We
did.
had one of our
That's
reunions.
right, we did. That you went to.
Yep. that was the
Okay,
one I
at the
went
Driftwood,
to.
okay.
Just had a baby, but I went to that one. Made sure
Okay.
I made it.
Yeah, a question back for,
When Bronzo's was first opened up, my sister and I, we're twins, we were the first ones who we had a double wedding, and we were the first ones to have our reception there.
very good,
It was beautiful.
good.
We had over 400 people.
What?
We were talking about Orlando's, talking about Orlando's Market. Orlando's Market was the most modern market when it came in. I remember this because they had the doors when you walk in, they would open automatically. We never saw that. Remember the old AMP they had down the corner? The AMP, well, those had the regular push doors, you pushed in. But Orlando's had the magic doors. So I'd walk and the door would open, and my father said to me, "That's magic." I was thrilled.
John, what was the bar on Route 9, near where South Street hits Route 9? I think near the very
The Moors, and they can talk about that, that was
Yeah.
before my,
And Simeon's.
okay.
Simeon's. Yeah.
For a short period of time, they had a pitch and putt golf place there.
St. Andrews?
Yeah.
St. Andrews?
Little John's Quarterlinks.
Oh, here's a question for you
Little
guys.
St. Andrews.
Middle St. Andrews.
Mike, I got a question, you probably can answer this. Canada Dry Building, Maple Ave, right? Well, they had a new drink out, and they opened up a little miniature golf course right beside the place to promote the drink. Do you remember the golf course?
A little bit.
Who remember, anybody remember? Yes?
I don't remember what it was called, but I
You
remember.
remember the course though? It was a miniature golf.
Chelsea.
Well, that was the building.
Yeah.
But the golf course was Little Elves,
Yeah.
to promote the drink. Yeah, the Little Elves golf course.
Okay. And Mike, in 1968, Town Hall was still next to the library?
I think the year before.
Yeah.
67, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
There was a question back there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, were there hippies in Shrewsbury at that time?
Hippies?
Hippies.
Hippies?
Well,
Oh, yes.
we were in the class of 68,
Yeah.
Gail and Henry and myself, and we think somewhere along the line, we had like a walkout, sit-in type thing, but we can't remember what it was about.
The lunch strike. Remember the lunch strike we had?
Or even if we did it,
Wait, the lunch, you guys organized it. Lunch strike.
I didn't, I brought my lunch out.
Oh, man. No, it was, I mean, we had fun. It was fun in high school. You know, I substitute teach the high school now, and I tell the kids, you guys are nice. You guys say, every time I pass a paper out, thank you, Mr. G. I know kids used to throw the papers back at the teacher.
we had teachers that used to throw things at us.
Oh, yeah.
Chalk, Mr. Kaminsky, if you were kind of dozing off, throw chalk at you.
Who was the
Mr.
who was the principal of Shrewsbury High School back then?
Well, Mr. Cook, but Mr. Donovan was the disciplinarian.
Okay.
Mr. Donovan. Well, first it was Mr. Bannon, the first
Tom
one.
Bannon, yeah.
It was Mr. Bannon. And I remember one time I was walking down the corridor, going to the first class, Eddie Arizzi was in front of me. And I know I was a wise guy, but I was bad. And I was kicking his heels a little bit, right? And Mr. Lavelle was behind me, and I didn't see him. Oh. I felt a hand right on my shirt. He spun me around. He was carrying books like that. And when books went flying, he pinned me against the lockers. And he said, don't do that again, young man. I won't.
Who was the Who was the athletic director, Shrewsbury? Was it
Bergstrom, Frank
Bergstrom? Okay.
I mean, you know what? He was sick then. He wasn't doing very
Okay.
well.
And then Mike Clement.
And then Clement took over. We were gone by then. But Bergstrom was there through our senior year. I don't know what happened after that. I think he
No,
got sick
Mike
right
Mike
after
was
that.
the, Mike was the athletic director when I was there.
Yeah, me too.
Not when you were there, it was Bergstrom.
No, yeah, he was,
Mike was just a basketball coach. He was basketball
he
and
had more
baseball.
of a title, he was a
And he did
gym
cross country.
teacher.
Well, they covered for him.
Yeah,
They scheduled, he didn't have, he'd come in the gym like this looking for Bill Paquette. He'd go, Bill! Bill! And Mr. Paquette would say, what does he want now?
Well, this is your chance. You got two guys who really know Shrewsbury history here in different ways. And any questions?
what do you wanna know, Dave? Harris,
Donnie's
what do
got
you
a
wanna know?
question.
We
No.
were talking about Orlando's and the new doors, the new
Yeah.
store. You remember the old store?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was right,
It was like a two-family.
yes.
yeah.
Very narrow, with
Yes.
the Merrill cleaners went in there.
Merrill, then he had the
That was
hobby
after.
shop after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a green building.
Donald?
When I was in the 4th grade,
You made it that
across
far?
the street, if you were bad, the principal hit you with a ruler. That was bad. Pulled my hand
You
away
got
once,
hit a lot?
hit herself in the hip. I was really pissed.
Then you get it knuckles.
Dario Marquisio,
Oh, Mr. Marquisio.
athletic director, or coach.
Yeah. I have a story about him. It's in the next book I got coming out. I'm gonna give you a little sneak preview. Mr. Marquisio had a head like this. His head, his shoulders, and everything was a block, right? So we're scrimmaging. I didn't play football. I played in nice sports, basketball and baseball. So we're scrimmaging North High, and Ronnie Safer. Remember Ronnie Safer, Mike?
Yeah.
Ronnie was good size, about my height, about maybe 190 pounds. He was a lineman.
Yeah.
Now this is full pads now. He missed his block. And Billy Mattress, our running back, against North High, got nailed. Mario comes like a Hulk. Walk. Oh, damn you, Safer. Now Ronnie's just getting up.
Yeah.
I'll show you how to block. Boom! I would sprawl him back in. It was funny to watch it. It wasn't funny to get it. He said, and he stood over him. That's how you block. Remember doing that today?
Yeah.
Oh, you'd have a,
I got fired over uniforms the other day.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And, but, you know, but we
You didn't
didn't.
even contact
Good
anyone.
morning to somebody,
Yeah.
like fire.
There was another time working for the Parks Department. I was out of college. It was just the beginning of the summer, right? And I'm in the truck with Dave Nobley and Donnie Sheehan. Now the truck is parked up at the edge of the parking lot, and there's still gym classes going on. Well, the kids came out and they were throwing football around. Mr. Marquisio hadn't come out yet. And we're talking to Mr. Clement outside the truck, and all of a sudden the football comes over the fence. Now the fence was locked, the chain link fence. So this kid, I forget his name was Doobie or something. He jumped over the fence, grabbed the football. Now, by this time, Mr. Marquisio came out and he had his clipboard. He's starting to take attendance. Well, Doobie throws the ball back, hits him in the squash. Oh, Marquisio. And he started swearing, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. And he come up to the fence, and he's shaking the fence, and get back in his class. So Dave Nolley says to Doobie, if I were you, I'd stay right here. I'll take an F for the class. I'm not going over that fence.
Okay, any other questions about 1968 or Shrewsbury history? Otherwise, we'll thank Mike and Henry. And again, they both have books available, so it's a great opportunity. In that, I'm going to turn it back over to Eric. Thank you very much, Eric, for the chance to do this.